This is the 10th year since I lost control of my body.
Congratulations, host. You have successfully completed the mission and will now return to your original world.
I don't want to.
The voices of the system and the traveler echoed in my mind. And I, the original owner of this body, finally escaped from that dark, endless room and returned to my own body.
Emily, please marry me. I've waited so long for this moment.
Looking at the man kneeling on one knee in front of me, his eyes filled with tenderness, I almost forgot how he treated me back then. A sneer appeared on my face. Then, under his hopeful gaze, I picked up the ring in his hand.
Emily, you agreed!
Unfortunately, the next moment, I threw the ring to the ground with force. Under his stunned gaze, I stomped on it with my right foot.
Michael, I wonder how it feels to be humiliated like this. You're trash, and so is your love.
Sarah, how can you say that? Do you know how long Michael has been preparing for this proposal?
How can you treat his feelings like this?
Not only did I treat them poorly, but I also felt disgusted. There were many of his friends present, all of whom had bullied me in the past. So why did they think I would let them off so easily?
Emily, is there some kind of misunderstanding? You love me so much, how could you?
Michael, as humble as a dog, quickly picked up the ring from the ground, carefully wiped it, and tried to put it on my finger. His hands gripped mine tightly, and remembering the days of being bullied, my stomach churned. I felt sick to my core.
Don't touch me. You make me sick.
My real name is not Sarah, but Lily. My parents named me Lily because they hoped I would grow like the branches of a tree. And I did as they wished, getting into a prestigious high school in the city from a small fishing village.
Hello everyone, my name is Lily, and I'm from a small fishing village in X City. I hope we can get along well.
On the first day of school, filled with nervousness and excitement, the teacher assigned me to sit next to Michael, making us desk mates. When I first saw him, he was wearing a white shirt, with slightly long hair falling over his forehead, casually twirling a pen in his right hand. He looked just like the male lead in a novel.
Hello.
His voice was cold, and his tone was as icy as his expression. I saw his furrowed brows and disdainful look. I thought it was my imagination. After all, who would harbor such malice towards someone they just met? Until after class, when a girl from our class asked me to accompany her to the restroom. I thought it was a gesture of care for a new classmate, as girls often go to the restroom together with friends. But as soon as I walked into the stall, they blocked the door, and buckets of cold water were poured over me. Soaked to the skin, I screamed. Outside the stall, their laughter was piercing. I wanted to ask why, but my body was trembling, and I couldn't form a single coherent sentence. The enthusiasm I had for the new school was completely extinguished. The mixture of menstrual blood and the icy water on my pants emitted a strong metallic smell. All that was left was helplessness.
Lily, that's your name, right? So tacky.
The name my parents had given me with so much hope was ridiculed by them, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer.
So what if you got into our school from a little fishing village? A salted fish will always be a salted fish.
Everyone knows you came here to find a rich guy. The way you looked at Michael just now, you must have known he's the heir of the Michael family before you even enrolled.
Gold digger.
But Michael probably doesn't even like you. You smell like fish.
We're just helping you clean up.
Another bucket of cold water was poured over me. Their laughter and footsteps gradually faded away, and I crouched on the ground, helplessly trying to fix my clothes. When I returned to the classroom, the lesson had already started. The teacher looked at my disheveled state without saying a word, seemingly annoyed, and impatiently told me to come in.
Hurry up and take your seat.
Annoyed at what? It was clearly their fault. Under the disgusted gazes of the entire class, I returned to my seat.
Here, take this.
Michael, who sat next to me, suddenly handed me a jacket. I took it and whispered my thanks. It was the first bit of warmth I felt at this school.
Thank you.
Before that incident, I thought he might be different from the others. Until I went to return the jacket and overheard his conversation with his friends.
A girl like her would be grateful for even a little bit of kindness from me. Might even agree to be my girlfriend.
1 week, to make me his girlfriend, that was their bet. Playing with someone's feelings for fun. After they finished talking, I approached and handed him the jacket.
Here's your jacket.
I could feel the mocking gazes around me and Michael's confident smile. It didn't matter. I considered it a repayment for the disgusting kindness from the day before. After I left, Michael turned and threw the jacket into the trash can. His face was full of mocking laughter. For the next week, he pursued me, and the whole school knew. His fangirls' bullying went from overt to covert. Locked dormitory doors, soaked bedding. All because of him. Did he know about this? He didn't, because to him, I was just a game. Did I want to fight back? I dreamed of it. But this was the school I had worked so hard to get into, and their family backgrounds were beyond my reach. But without a doubt, Michael lost the bet. I would never agree to be with him, let alone like him. He was furious, and they escalated their bullying. Michael was the instigator of this torment. And there were countless bystanders. Their filthy insults and violent actions were like swords piercing my body, leaving me broken and shattered. These memories had long taken root in my mind, making me feel fear and disgust every time I recalled them. Michael's proposal scene ended in chaos. Under the cold gazes of his friends, I left alone. After being out of sync with this world for 10 years, I could no longer find my place. I didn't know how James was doing now. After what happened, he probably didn't want to see me. I laughed at myself, but tears silently fell from my eyes. How pathetic, he was my only family in this world. But in the end, I lost him too. On a whim, I went to the bar James often visited. Sarah had told me about it to make me give up. The bar was filled with the scent of alcohol and hormones. On the vibrant dance floor, men and women danced energetically. In a dark corner, I saw James. Next to him sat his friends. He was slumped on the sofa, his hair disheveled over his forehead, looking utterly dejected, downing one drink after another.
James?
As if he had no regard for his life. When he picked up the next glass, I hurriedly stepped forward and snatched it from his hand.
Who dares?
He looked up, somewhat stunned. Upon seeing me, he gave a self-mocking smile and then sarcastically said,
Isn't this our big star? Today is your long-awaited proposal day. How do you have time to come find me?
He grabbed the glass from my hand and drank it in one gulp.
James?
I never imagined that our next meeting would be under such circumstances. I lowered my head, feeling a lump in my throat, both uncomfortable and aggrieved. A sharp pain pierced my heart. After a long while, I finally spoke.
Didn't you promise to be my knight for life? I'm Emily, not her. Please believe me.
I tentatively grabbed his sleeve, just like many times before.
Sarah, what more do you want? Haven't you heard James enough? You are already Michael's fiancée.
I didn't. You know, because of him, I was bullied for so long. How could I possibly like him?
Enough, I believe you.
Before I could finish, James suddenly grasped my hand. His grip was strong, and the warmth of his hand gradually warmed my cold body.
James, you.
My Emily, I can still recognize her.
He turned his head, his eyes filled with a gentle sparkle, just like back then. He didn't seem surprised at all. All these years, no one had discovered that Lily's body housed Sarah. Even if they did, they would find it unbelievable. Now, perhaps only James would believe. My nose stung, and tears flowed uncontrollably. All the grievances of these years poured out in front of James. I cried louder and louder.
Don't cry.
He gently cupped my face with both hands, a bit at a loss, then softly wiped away my tears.
James, thank you.
Thank you for what? There's no need for thanks between us. I promise to be your knight for life.
Photos of James and me hugging in the bar quickly spread online. It soon became a hot topic. But the two of us didn't care at all. I followed James to his apartment. Unlike the house he rented in high school, this apartment was much larger. I walked into the bathroom to freshen up. As I took off my clothes, I noticed the countless marks on my body. So dirty. I cried as I scrubbed the marks over and over, until my skin turned red, but the marks didn't fade at all.
Emily, are you done?
Almost.
James suddenly opened the door and walked in.
Don't look.
I quickly covered the marks on my chest. But it was futile. James said nothing, his face cold as he approached with a bathrobe. He then draped the bathrobe over me and carried me out.
Is this why you were in there for so long?
Dirty. Disgusting.
It seemed that in James's presence, my tears could always flow freely.
It's not you who's dirty, it's them. Don't cry, okay?
He bent down and kissed away my tears.
Just like how it was Sarah with Michael, not you.
But it's my body, not Sarah's. Why should she get to use my body to do the most intimate things with someone I despise, just because she wasn't the one bullied? She didn't bear the pain, she has no idea how much it hurts. James, I hate it so much, why does it have to be me?
I cried loudly, desperately scratching at the marks on my body, as if erasing them would reset everything. We could have had a wonderful decade. But we were powerless. James held me tightly, his eyes red, gripping my hands firmly.
Emily, stop scratching. I'll cover these marks, and once they're covered, Emily won't hurt anymore. Emily, look ahead, we'll have many, many decades together.
The next morning, I woke up in James's arms. His words from last night echoed in my mind.
Yes, look forward, there's no need to be sad over those unnecessary people. Even if it's for him.
I carefully traced his features with my index finger and couldn't resist stealing a kiss on his cheek. But James, who had just woken up, caught me.
Stealing kisses, huh? You can kiss me openly.
No.
Just then, the phone on the bedside table rang. It was Michael. I didn't want to answer, but James saw it.
Give it to me, I'll answer.
I handed the phone to James. As soon as he answered, Michael's furious voice came through.
Sarah, you were supposed to be my girlfriend.
Sorry, Lily is my girlfriend now.
Even if Sarah didn't accept my proposal, it doesn't mean it's your turn, James. Don't forget how Sarah rejected you back then.
That made me angry. I signaled James to hand me the phone. It had to be faced.
Sorry, the Sarah you liked is long gone and will never come back. Now I am Lily, the one who rejected you back then.
Emily, I don't believe it. You must be lying to me, right? You once held me and said you would always be by my side, that you would love me forever.
Why would you think I would fall for someone who once bullied me? I hate you. I even wish you would disappear.
It's not like that. If I make amends, will you come back to me?
The pain in my heart, even if healed, doesn't mean it never happened. Besides, I never loved him. Michael wanted to say more, but I hung up the phone. How ridiculous, I can't forget a single thing Sarah and Michael did. I watched from the shadows as my body fell in love with my enemy step by step, as my loved ones left me one by one. When did Sarah start controlling my body? Probably after a year of bullying. I thought she came to save me, but she pushed me into another abyss. Since Sarah took over my body, my soul was banished to a small corner of my mind. I could hear her conversations with the so-called system and knew everything she did with my body. In her world, Sarah was a pampered young lady. But she died young and was forced to bind with a system to complete tasks. Her task was to win Michael's favor until it reached 100. Now that I think about it, it's laughable. How could I expect a pampered young lady to save me? On the first day she crossed over, she showed intense disdain for me. She despised my background and insulted my parents. She didn't want to be bullied, so she desperately flattered the bullies, currying favor with them. The only thing that might have satisfied her was my face. But to win Michael over, a pretty face wasn't enough. The young lady wanted the best of everything, so she asked my parents for money in my name. She asked for tens of thousands at once. She despised my background and my parents, yet she had to ask them for money. They thought their precious daughter might be in trouble at school and hurriedly brought the last few thousand they had to the school. But Sarah found them embarrassing. I watched my parents, exhausted from their journey, and wanted to tell them it wasn't me, that I didn't need that much money. But they couldn't hear me. Nor could they save me. They were disappointed and heartbroken, yet they tried to hide it from me. I knew what they were thinking. Most of the students at school wore branded clothes, while I still wore old clothes from years ago. They didn't blame me for my supposed vanity, instead, they wondered if they could work harder to give their daughter a better life. Watching their hunched backs, I cried uncontrollably. At that moment, I wished I could end Sarah's life. Why did it have to be me? I cried in the dark room, while Sarah took their hard-earned money and went shopping. The transformed Sarah amazed the entire school, while my mother died in a car accident on her way back. They never understood why their daughter suddenly changed. On the day of my mother's funeral, what was Sarah doing? She was kissing Michael. The transformed her stunned the entire school, and she also caught Michael's eye. Michael was surprised but didn't reject her advances.
If you had been like this earlier, you wouldn't have been bullied so much. Since you would end up trying to please me anyway, why were you so stubborn before?
Sarah's actions made the old me look like a joke. She became Michael's girlfriend, and no one could bully her anymore. I watched all this from my dark, hopeless cage, powerless to do anything.
Maybe if Michael breaks up with her, she would give up, and I could return, or maybe we could both disappear together.
But I waited for 2 years, until we graduated high school, and still, nothing changed. Sarah's grades had never been good, and after coming to this world, all she thought about was winning over Michael. She failed the college entrance exam, and my father seemed to age decades overnight seeing me like this. In the following 8 years, Sarah used her good looks to get into the entertainment industry with Michael's help, becoming a popular star. But her past words and actions were dug up, and the internet was filled with overwhelming criticism. My father had a heart attack at home, unnoticed by anyone. It wasn't until the next day that Uncle Chen from next door found him. In just 10 years, my life had fallen apart, my dreams shattered, leaving only endless regret.
James, will you come with me to see my parents?
Don't worry, your parents won't blame you. They love you too much for that.
With James's comfort, we went to the small fishing village where I had lived for over a decade. The place was the same, but everything else had changed.
Dad, Mom, I'm here to see you.
I placed flowers on the ground and knelt down. The parents who had once shielded me from the storms were now two small tombstones. I couldn't help but cry out loud.
I'm sorry. It's been so many years, and I haven't come to see you. I'm unfilial.
James knelt beside me, saying nothing, just holding me in his arms.
Do you want to visit the house?
On the way home, we ran into Uncle Chen. Uncle Chen was James's adoptive father.
Dad!
Uncle Chen nodded, but his gaze fell on me. It was a look of disappointment and sadness.
It's good to come back and visit. After all, you can't forget your roots.
Uncle Chen walked ahead, and we followed him. Nothing had changed in the house. The furniture was still in the same place, as if nothing had happened, except for the dust that had settled on everything.
I opened a drawer and found an old photo of my parents holding me as a child. The faces in the photo were blurred, covered in a thick layer of dust.
This was probably the only photo my parents had left me. They had worked hard all their lives and hadn't taken many photos. I carefully wiped the dust off the photo. Fortunately, it wasn't too damaged, and I could still make out their faces.
Try it! The yang mei is from your backyard.
I took the bowl from him and tasted it. It was sweet and sour, just like I remembered. My mother used to make it for me. My eyes reddened, and the sourness in my heart surged, filling my eyes with tears.
Lily's first birthday, February 12, 1998.
I had been holding back my tears, but seeing the words on the back of the photo, I couldn't stop them from falling onto my hands. Although James had managed to remove our scandal from the trending topics yesterday, it was still spreading like wildfire online. I thought the matter would end there, but Michael suddenly posted on social media.
I want to apologize for the bullying incident from years ago. I hope to gain your forgiveness and ask for another chance.
Public opinion shifted dramatically. Most people expressed sympathy for me, but some of his die-hard fans didn't believe it and accused me of being manipulative.
She's just trying to ruin his reputation. After all these years, she should forgive him.
I didn't respond. I let the public opinion simmer. James had been taking me on trips to relax, and we had just returned home when an unexpected guest blocked my way. A girl in a red dress stood there, looking delicate but with eyes full of disdain, glaring at me.
Weren't you supposed to treat Michael well?
I knew she was Sarah. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check.
Do you know how badly Michael is being criticized online? Hurry up and clarify things on social media.
She was hysterical, and just as her hand was about to slap my face, a strong hand grabbed her wrist and flung her aside.
You must be Sarah.
James stood beside me, his aura cold and intimidating as he looked down at her with anger and displeasure. Sarah staggered a few steps before steadying herself. She looked at him, then at me, and suddenly laughed.
So that's why. You like him, don't you? Didn't he tell you?
You came to this world for Michael, yet you're wasting time here with us? His current situation, TSK, isn't looking good.
What's wrong with him?
He's at the online bar. You're welcome.
After hearing this, Sarah hurried off. Without Michael, her return would be meaningless. After Sarah left, James gently patted my head, unclenching my fists and intertwining our fingers.
It's okay now. I'm here.
He reminded me of the boy who stood by my side in our first year of high school. But James's behavior just now clearly indicated he was hiding something from me. Since he didn't want to talk about it, I didn't press further. Once inside, I picked up my phone to contact a paparazzo, but James saw through my intentions.
Want to expose them and add fuel to Michael's current scandal?
I nodded.
You knew I wanted to do this all along.
Why else would I tell Sarah the location? I'm no saint. Here's a secret, that bar is mine, my dear.
He hugged my waist and nuzzled his head against my chest like a puppy seeking praise. It tickled a bit, and I felt a twinge of sweetness in my heart.
I know.
After all, once James's biological parents found him, he became the heir to the Chin family within a few years. That happened in the first year Sarah took over my body. Sarah's words lingered in my mind, giving me a sense of foreboding. The unfinished conversation and James's deliberate avoidance weighed heavily on my heart, making it hard to breathe. That night, I dreamt of my high school days. Being bullied at school was tough, and James noticed something was wrong the first time he came to see me. He had dropped out of school early due to his grades and family circumstances.
Lily, what's wrong? You seem off.
Seeing his clenched fists, I silently shook my head. It was no use. Besides, I didn't want to drag him into it. I tugged at the hem of his shirt, and he always responded to that. Sure enough, he looked down at me the next moment.
James, can I move out and live with you?
If we were in the classroom, with the teacher and others watching, they wouldn't go too far. But the constantly damp bed in the dormitory was unbearable. Under my almost pleading gaze, he nodded.
Of course, Lily. You can stay with me.
James had just moved to a city and only had enough money to rent a small place. Seeing me look around, he scratched the back of his head awkwardly.
It's a bit small.
No, it's actually quite good.
At night, I slept on the bed while he made a bed on the floor. For some reason, neither of us spoke.
I'll pick you up after school tomorrow.
Wouldn't that be too much trouble for you?
Why are you being so polite? You used to trouble me a lot more when we were kids. You always asked me to carry you, even though I wasn't much older than you. Every time I tried to put you down, you'd pull your legs up.
We both laughed. That night, I slept better than I had since starting high school. I thought the 3 years of high school would pass like this, but then Sarah came. She wanted to win over Michael, and the first step was to get rid of James. One day, James came home from work to find Sarah packing her suitcase. The disdain in her eyes was clear and unmistakable.
Lily, what's wrong?
I want to move out.
Why?
Because I don't like you and don't want to share a room with you anymore. You have nothing, James. No family background, no education, you can't give me anything. Besides, I've always liked Michael. Now that we're together, you have no reason to stop me.
She walked past James with her suitcase, not looking back. I was left with the image of James's desolate and defeated expression. It wasn't supposed to be like this.
Stop it, just stop.
I shook my head frantically in the dark room, banging on the barrier outside, tears streaming down my face. But it was useless. I watched as James lowered his head in defeat, saying nothing, not even defending himself. I wanted to tell him he was great, that I couldn't have made it through without him. It wasn't him who couldn't leave, it was me. And I had liked him for a long time. But he couldn't hear me. Every day after that, I thought about how to regain control of my body. When I finally did and went to find James, I discovered he had already left. It must have been because of what Sarah said. After all, it was me who had said those hurtful things. The system, knowing my intentions, reinforced the restrictions on the dark room. For the next 9 years, I never got out. In a daze, I found myself back in that rented room, seeing James again.
James.
What are you doing here?
He looked at me with unfamiliarity and disgust.
I like you,
I said, grabbing his hand, only for him to shake it off.
But I don't want to like you anymore.
After class, a girl from our class, Lily, asked me to accompany her to the restroom.
Hey, could you come with me to the restroom?
I thought it was a gesture of care for a new classmate. Girls often go to the restroom together with friends. But as soon as I walked into the stall, they blocked the door, and buckets of cold water were poured over me. Soaked to the skin, I screamed.
Ha ha ha. Look at her.
Their laughter was piercing. I wanted to ask why, but my body was trembling, and I couldn't form a single coherent sentence. The enthusiasm I had for the new school was completely extinguished. The mixture of menstrual blood and the icy water on my pants emitted a strong metallic smell. All that was left was helplessness. After that day, Sarah didn't bother me for a long time. Instead, James asked if I wanted to go abroad to study design.
Would you like to go abroad to study design?
Then I would be apart from you for a long time.
He buried his head in my hair, inhaling deeply, seemingly reluctant as well.
I don't want to be apart from you either, but I want you to do what you love. Because of this darn time travel, you've already lost 10 years.
James cupped my face, his tone serious. Then his soft lips met mine. That night, he seemed especially tender and patient, making it hard to resist. A week before I was to leave for abroad, I ran into Sarah. She was wearing a loose dress, her belly noticeably larger than before.
Is she pregnant?
Seeing me look at her, Sarah gave me a provocative smile.
Surprised? I'm carrying Michael's child, and he's treating me very well now. He still recognizes me.
I raised an eyebrow, saying nothing.
But James seemed unwilling for me to have much contact with Sarah, his grip on my hand tightening as he tried to lead me away. We hadn't walked far when Michael appeared beside Sarah. He seemed surprised to see James and me there, but didn't lose his composure. Michael walked ahead without looking back, while Sarah followed behind him, looking utterly humble. But none of it concerned me anymore. Before leaving for abroad, I had one last gift for Michael. The next day, news of Michael's tax evasion was all over the internet. I was browsing the trending topics on Twitter when I suddenly saw a friend request from Michael on WeChat. I immediately rejected it without hesitation, but he persisted, sending request after request. Reluctantly, I accepted. I wanted to see what he had to say. But the video he sent next made my skin crawl. In the video, Sarah was chained to a bed, tears streaming down her face. As Michael approached her, she shook her head desperately, trying to escape, but she couldn't move. Michael slapped her, and her right cheek swelled up instantly.
Lily, it's all her fault. Now I'm punishing her for you. Can we start over? Lily, I've always loved you. After that bet, I truly fell for you. But when you rejected me, I was humiliated and made a mistake by being with Sarah.
Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh coldly. But as soon as I did, blood splattered across the screen, accompanied by Sarah's piercing screams. Horrified by the scene, I screamed and threw my phone, then buried myself in James's arms.
Michael, he had really lost his mind. He had taken the unborn child from Sarah's womb.
Disgusting. Let me clean the lens so I don't scare Lily.
James picked up the phone I had thrown, frowning.
Call the police.
This was a criminal case now. When the police arrived, Sarah was barely recognizable from the torture, and Michael sat on the floor, dazed. Later, I learned from the police report that Michael had not only committed murder but was also under the influence of drugs. He was eventually sentenced to death. Before the execution, Michael kept demanding to see me, but I ignored him. He had brought this upon himself. And tomorrow, I would be flying abroad to start a new chapter in my life. I saw his furrowed brows and disdainful look. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Who would harbor such malice towards someone they just met?
Hey, can you come to the restroom with me?
I thought it was a gesture of care for a new classmate. Girls often go to the restroom together. But as soon as I walked into the stall, they blocked the door and poured buckets of cold water over me. Soaked to the skin, I screamed. Their laughter outside the stall was piercing. I wanted to ask why, but my body was trembling too much to form a single coherent sentence. The enthusiasm I had for the new school was completely extinguished. All that was left was helplessness.